Your boy Shane Black Reacts back with another video, back with another banger. Thank you guys for rocking with your boy. We are currently sitting at 460 subscribers, but if you are new, please hit that like and subscribe. It helps the algorithm and it helps viewers like you see more of the beautiful work I do. Without further ado, you look at the title, you looking at the thumbnail, you already know what time it is. Let's get right into it. It's been a minute, y'all. It's been a cool minute since I did a reaction. And the reaction I was thinking about is the NBA of the 90s versus today. I'm a big fan of the 90s. Born in the 80s, grew up in the 90s. Jordan's my GOAT. What they say, go argue with your mama or something like that, or whatever they want to say today. Go argue with somebody else. If you want to argue with somebody, we can. Hit me up on TikTok. That's Shane. Yes, please. I want all the smoke. What do you say? I want problems always. Yes, I'm him. Like Michael Jordan's my GOAT. LeBron James could be your GOAT. Paul George of all people could be your GOAT. Yeah. But today we're going to be doing a reaction to, that era, 90s basketball versus today. And without further ado, let's get into it.
Have changed a lot within the NBA over the last few decades, and although there is certainly a new generation of fans that the modern game appeals to, many traditional fans are having a difficult time finding it as intriguing. A lot of old school fans are very public about their dislike of the current NBA product.
You can call me
and I'm sure many of you viewers fit that description to a T. But without the full context, it's easy for those critics to simply come across like nostalgia-driven, grumpy old men who just want people to get off their lawn, rather than as objective individuals who have legitimate complaints about how the product's quality has declined over time.
That's a fact.
Today, we're using the NBA in the 1990s as the example and comparing it to the modern game
Dream Shake.
as we analyze the differences that made the 90s brand so
Charles
special.
Barkley.
First off, the physicality. Even going back to the game of basketball's beginning in the late 1800s, it had a very physical presence. Much so that it was even played in a bloody steel cage. Almost a century later, the NBA in the 1980s featured a very punishing style where basically a no easy layups rule was understood and accepted league-wide. The thing about the 1990s is I feel like this era was the perfect balance between the physicality of the previous eras and the fluidity of the modern game. A major reason for that is
we got a video for you, Dream. We got a video coming.
Implemented in the year 1990, which means teams like the Bad Boy Pistons and players like Bill Laimbeer could no longer simply assault people in an attempt to win basketball games.
They were dirty.
The 90s still had a very physical presence, but it wasn't overdone. And with a lack of a defensive 3-second violation, big men were allowed to camp in the paint and protect the rim at pretty much all times. Second is the mentality. Back in the 90s, players were not always so friendly with one another on and off the court, as almost every leader had a sense of pride in their team and teammates. Over the last 10 years, it's become more common for players to work out together in the off-season, and even frequently recruit one another rather than focusing on beating each other. More on the reasons why in a bit. Giannis Antetokounmpo is one of the few exceptions in the modern game, as he's made it abundantly clear that he doesn't work out with the other players in the off-season, and isn't about that buddy-buddy culture.
Facts.
But the exception that Giannis is today was just the norm in the 1990s, as rivalries and a competitive dislike of one another was just more common. Another difference in mentality was the general player's willingness to play through bumps and bruises.
Facts.
There's been numerous players who have the reputation of taking nights off, even when they're healthy, or at least 90% healthy, for the sake of preserving.
Yeah, like Paul George, I understand. Kawhi Leonard, not so much. Come on, bro. He going through it right now anyway with them Clippers. If I was able to play, physically able to play, I would be on the court. Even Jordan said it. Kobe said it. Jordan said it. AI gave it his all. It's a different cloth we cut from. You already know. If you can like agree with that, give me a comment. Let me know. Drop a like and let me know if you would want to see more players that you go pay your hard-earned money to play or sit on the sideline and, warm-ups.
energy, and health for the playoffs. The problem is, if we as fans buy tickets to see our favorite teams play, we expect to see the star players if they're healthy enough to play.
Yes.
But the load managing era has ruined that experience for many people in plenty of instances. It's like Larry Bird once said, that if you're paid to go to work and you're able to go to work, you go to work.
I promise you guys, I have never seen this video before. And look, I hit the pause button, it's on the GOAT. Y'all ain't ready for that. Y'all ain't ready for that. But if you're physically able to play and they are paying you to play, go play.
Great players from the 90s like Michael Jordan, Karl Malone, Reggie Miller, and John Stockton have more seasons where they played at least 80 games than seasons that they did not. You can't say that about the careers of modern stars like LeBron James, James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, and Chris Paul. Number 3. In the 90s, a player building his brand and his popularity was based almost entirely on his on-the-court success. I'm not going to act like this was true in absolutely every instance, as certain players like Dennis Rodman were able to become incredibly well-known for things beyond his play on the court. But nowadays, there's so much that a player can do through the internet and through social media to become one of the biggest names in the sport. Is this a negative thing in and of itself? Not necessarily, but what it does do over time is it creates less incentive for these younger players to become the best at their craft.
Facts.
If simply a pretty good player can get a $50 million contract and become well known as a social media personality, what incentive does that player have to become a great player on the court? A player like Steve Kerr was a valuable role player and was one of the most efficient shooters in the league, who played on the team that most people consider as the greatest NBA team of all time. And at that point, Steve was getting paid $750,000
sound like a good check to me.
Nowadays, there are plenty of players all over the league who are about as valuable as Kerr was, but in many instances, they're making more than 10 times that amount of money. Even if adjusted for inflation, Steve's contract doesn't come anywhere close. Number 4. Contracts were longer, which gave fans a larger amount of time to develop an attachment to their stars and role players. In the 80s, Magic Johnson signed a 25-year, $25 million contract. In the 90s, contracts like Michael Jordan's were as long as 8 seasons. And in the NBA today, under this current collective bargaining agreement, the max length of a contract is only 5 seasons. And there's usually a player option around the middle point as well. Nowadays, with short contracts, plenty of options, and frequent trade requests, players are moving from team to team so frequently that it feels like players are just mercenaries for the organizations. This was rarely the case in the golden age of basketball, as most stars were just with one team until they sometimes switched jerseys in the very twilight of their career. Lastly, the NBA in the 90s, for the most part, was a political-free zone. Now, this doesn't mean that players didn't have their own personal politics and convictions back then. Of course they did. But the NBA league office and the brand itself wasn't looking to make public stances on politics like they do today, which back then created an exciting world of escapism where fans could come together and not feel divided by the everyday issues that are constantly being debated.
Man, he is spitting facts. Like, honestly, I ain't even want to pause right there, because what he was saying, I would literally be saying right now, in this era, we didn't have the social media. We didn't have the every time you get off of a game, you can go ahead and update your status and tell everybody how you really feel, or demand a trade, or demand more money. Like, it wasn't that instantaneous. You really had to put in the work and talk to the front offices. And now, like, with the the update of social media, anybody could say anything. But this era was a golden time where you really had to. It was no social media, no internet. It was unplugged. Just go hoop. Let your game do the talking.
The most focused upon story each night was something related to the game of basketball. Like, will the Knicks finally prevail in their rivalry against Michael Jordan? Or who will assert themselves as the king of all big men, Olajuwon or Robinson? There's 2 ways the NBA can approach the topic of politics that I would embrace. 1, you could have a political-free zone where the NBA brand as a whole refuses to engage in any day-to-day politics and honestly recognizes itself as a non-political organization. Or there's option number 2, where the NBA welcomes all kinds of political stances. Players are free to express themselves and however they choose necessary, regardless of their own political affiliation. The problem with the NBA today is that it does neither of these. The league makes their political stances known and is partisan with those stances. Certain movements the league is openly promoting and in support of, while others it consistently discourages when it doesn't benefit their own interests. Understandably, this kind of hypocrisy pushes some fans away from the sport, which is an issue that was way less present in the more welcoming days of the 1990s NBA.
And, I hope this situation in the Persian Gulf puts sports in perspective. It's supposed to be entertainment. People have gotten out of hand with it, but hopefully sports will get back in its proper context, what it is, entertainment. And I hope for 2 hours a day, the troops over in the Persian Gulf and the fans can forget about everything and just enjoy themselves.
So what we going to do, we going to wrap it up right there, but I'm giving you my thoughts, critiques, and my opinions. Now, right now, we already know what the NBA is. The NBA is a powerhouse. They are cutting checks left and right. Pretty much you could take a role player, turn him into a star overnight. You put in a couple years, social media, hype videos and reels. You can get somebody from high school to college for 1 year into the pros. Back in the 90s, it was like, hey, if we want you out of high school, if you good enough out of high school, we can pull you out of high school, but that don't mean we going to get you out of high school and into the NBA right away. You have to be great. But then you have to go to college. You have to put some time in. We have to look at you in college. And if you want to be the number 1 draft, then cool. If not, keep it going. Work harder. But now it's different. With social media, you could put a highlight tape together. You could have some trainers. You could put you in a camp. You'd be good to go. And I know the NBA in the 90s was having camps, but they weren't having camps to this, what's the word I'm looking for? They wasn't having camps like today. It was out of this world today. And to me, if you ask me, I would take the pay of today and the physicality and the mentality of the 90s and mesh them together, because I already know some of the players today will not and won't survive. Some of the players today in today's NBA would not have survived in the 90s. If you agree, comment. If you disagree, comment. Let me know the truth. You can follow me on all platforms. I'm on TikTok, that's Shane. Here on YouTube, Instagram, Shane Black Reacts. See you on the next one, y'all. Peace.